Welcome back to the 40 Billion and a Tool YouTube channel, the reading series. The title of this next essay is Crow Beverage. Many of us have no idea how close the newly freed slaves were to our birthright of wealth and equal participation in charting the course of America. In the introduction to his book, Native Son, Richard Wright captures the essence of this pivotal moment in time before Black Wall Street, when our ancestors were separated from the best opportunity to build wealth and be a people that we've ever had in our history. The following excerpt, quote, "This separation was accomplished after the Civil War by the terror of the Ku Klux Klan, which swept the newly freed Negro through arson, pillage, and death out of the United States Senate, the House of Representatives, the many state legislatures, and out of the public, social, and economic life of the South. The motive for this assault was simple and urgent. The imperialistic tug of history had torn the Negro from his African home and had placed him, ironically, upon the most fertile plantation areas of the South. And when the Negro was freed, he outnumbered the whites in many of these fertile areas. Hence, a fierce and bitter struggle took place to keep the ballot from the Negro, for had he had a chance to vote, he would have automatically controlled the richest lands of the South, and with them the social, political, and economic destiny of a third of the Republic." Close quote. So let's fast forward to more recent times. Have you ever seen young children playing in a sand pit or at preschool? Black, white, Hispanic, Asian kids sharing toys and helping one another, having endless fun. Untainted is the word that comes to my mind, accompanied by the belief that if left to themselves, they'd interact this way all the days of their lives. But in comes their loving parents or grandparents, and this Kodak moment abruptly ends. Many children have this experience for a good 6 or so years of their lives, then move on to more regimented ranks, often against their natural instincts. Mommy, daddy, grandmother, or grandpa says it's time to live in the real world. 12 years later, say around 2003, it's time to attend the annual segregated prom. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Grammy. Thanks, Gramps. Thank you all for immersing me in our proud and unyielding traditions. Let's fast forward a little more. The MLK legacy ignored. Years after Brown versus Board of Education, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. found himself fighting harder than ever against the vestiges of Jim Crow, which had been the day-to-day reality he'd lived all his life. He died having experienced some concrete changes in American life and left us with his dream of more to come. He knew, however, that a cornered and dying Jim Crow was as dangerous as ever. He was well aware that Jim Crow was born out of a sentiment that said, "If I can't have you as my slave, you'll live a miserable existence under my feet." Dr. King, along with JFK, Malcolm, Bobby Kennedy, Fred Hampton, and many others, Medgar Evers, George Jackson, I can go on and on and on. They became casualties and martyrs as each in his own way contemplated the dismantling of this insidious monster called Jim Crow. Yet more than 20 years after the last assassination, we find Jim Crow still doing his dance. Yusuf Hawkins. What struck me most about the Yusuf Hawkins murder in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, was the year in which it happened, 1989, and the average age, 20, of the wolf pack that caused his death. 21 years after Dr. King's passing, this incident and others gave clear evidence that Jim Crow was still alive and well in many a household. To think that these kids were being conceived and carried in pregnancy at the time right up to Dr. King's assassination is mind-blowing. For as members of the first generation of his dream, they deserve to be weaned on something better than Jim Crow Beverage. Now, more than 50 years later, some, if not all, of these kids have raised children. Would you just love to be a fly on the wall of those households? I would. Believe me, Trent Lott wasn't the only one yearning for the good old days. So there's a residual haunting. And nowadays, the ghost of Jim Crow haunts both black and white. For about 60, 70 years now, it's been open season on white folks in black neighborhoods and, on occasion, in their own neighborhoods. At the height of the Black Power movement of the 60s and 70s, we see something unthinkable occurring in America. Black folks beating down white folks in public and getting away with it. That opened the floodgates. While 99% of this may have been the result of years and years of pent-up anger and frustration, it gradually gave way to mob mentality and outright criminality. Blacks began to victimize whites in some of the same ways whites victimized blacks, and for the same reason, skin color. If you got a flat tire in a black neighborhood, that was your ass. If you came in to cop drugs unescorted, consider yourself beat, robbed, or even killed. If you rode the subway in New York City, you weren't safe until the train passed through all the stations in black neighborhoods. To many blacks, this was just payback. They thanked Jesus, Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, and any other deity they could think of that they'd live to see the day when white folks walked in their shoes to any extent, that they experienced debilitating fear. We saw a mass exodus of whites out of urban centers. Those who remained generally were just as poor as blacks and shared varying levels of kinship with blacks. Consequently, they weren't necessarily victimized, but still caught a little hell now and then. Those who stood their ground were respected, sometimes feared. So what do we have in 2021? We've got both black and white interacting more on every level, which lends itself to the dream. We've also got that instinctive awareness of places in this country we still wouldn't be caught dead in. Upon superficial observation, it seems that America is very racially harmonious, and in some respects it is. Then you have those events that bring the venom to the surface so quick that it forces us to acknowledge how fractured and poisonous race relations in America really are. Currently, it is George Floyd. But code words for these emotions abound. OJ, Reginald Denny, Abner Louima, James Byrd, Rodney King, Forsyth, Georgia, Amadou Diallo, Cincinnati, LAPD, Michael Griffin, Reparations, Rosedale, New York, Willie Turks, Gravesend, Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Laquan McDonald, Sean Bell, Ahmaud Arbery, Walter Scott, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, and on and on and on. As a nation in recovery from racial hatred and all that it has wrought, the best advice for America at this stage is keep on faking it until you truly make it. As for my people in particular, I'll just remind us that becoming like our worst oppressor is one of the biggest setbacks we've suffered in our quest for dignity and the respect of the world. A black man, woman, or child, after what our people have endured, should be the last one on earth to victimize, violate, or mistreat someone because of the color of their skin.